administration of non-intravenous medications, okay, so giving drugs, prescribing medications, drugs, prescribe treatments or therapies, drugs, treat acute illnesses, infections, or injuries, drugs, treat chronic diseases or disorders, drugs, order medical or diagnostic clinical tests to give drugs. All right, welcome to another episode of the Doc Jacque Show. Today, I am very excited to talk about this topic. This is something that, we've been building our TikTok following. If you didn't know that I had a TikTok, I didn't know I had a TikTok till a couple months ago. So we've been building that, putting some content, some information on there. We've been having a lot of really good engagement between myself and people like yourself who are listening, watching, and just having an open forum and dialogue and conversation. And this came up. I had a couple of people reach out via Instagram, via TikTok, and they were talking about this. They were basically asking, can I be their PCP or can I be their children's pediatrician, more or less? And the short and sweet of it is, credentially speaking, no, I can't, but I can take care of you guys. I can take care of you. I can take care of your kids just like I take care of mine. Then I was like, you know what? I think I went through my podcast. I'm like, okay, I don't think I've done this yet. We did an episode on treating symptoms. I'm so hesitant to get into this. I don't know why. Let's just roll into it. This episode is why you don't need your pediatrician. Simple as that. Most people, get convinced by their parents, by their doctor, post-delivery, you have to go and make sure you go to the pediatrician, you have to go to the pediatrician. And if you don't go to the pediatrician and you used insurance a lot of the times for your birth, they won't cover it. What a great little incentive to hook you into your pediatrician. And now, I'm not saying that all pediatricians are bad. I know that there are some pediatricians that are really great. But it's like literally finding a needle in a haystack. It's borderline impossible to do that. So people are like, oh, what? Didn't you bring your kids to the pediatrician? I'm like, no. Why? Why would I bring my kids to the pediatrician? It's like a little kid drug dealer. Why would I introduce my kid to a drug dealer? It doesn't make any sense to me, because where we get frustrated as parents, and parents are reaching out to me. They're like, hey, every single time I go to the pediatrician, they want to push vaccines. They want to push antibiotics. They want to push this. They want to push that. I'm like, yeah, of course they do. That's what they do. This isn't making fun of the patients or the doctors. And like, this is just me speaking candidly. That's what they get paid to do. When you go to get a 10-minute oil change, and you're like, every time I go to get my oil changed, they always change my oil. Like, well, yeah. I mean, again, you're handing over the money for them to do that. So we have to really understand, what are pediatricians good for? And this is going to be fun. What are they good for? And what are they not good for? What are they trained to do? So I Googled a little bit before I popped on to do this here for us. And I was like, okay, all right. What are the pediatrician's job responsibilities? This is just a Google search and said pediatrician's job description on Google. So you can pull this up too. It says conducts medical examinations, diagnoses, and treats illnesses and injuries. Communicate with patient and their parents or caregivers, guides patients and caregivers on illness and injury prevention, and promotes lifelong health practices. Let's dissect that. Okay? Communicate patients and caregivers, on illness and injury prevention. If this worked, I wouldn't have been injured as many times as I was as a kid. I mean, come on. Like, I finally evened out the hole in my shin from my left side to the right side by throwing a hammer in it. Like, took me, 30 years or so. I guess it's been 20 some years from when I did the first injury to then recover for the symmetry. For whatever reason, my body loves to be symmetric or symmetrical. So I'm cool with that because I do have a little touch of OCD. And I think that's why I also am obsessed with what I do here. But injury prevention, okay, or illness prevention. When was the last time you went to your pediatrician and your pediatrician was like, you know what? Your kid shouldn't be eating dairy. Your kid shouldn't be eating candy for Halloween. Your kid shouldn't be eating gluten or red dyes, or you shouldn't be giving them all this processed food. Shouldn't be stopping at McDonald's on the way here or on the way back as a treat because they came to the pediatrician. When was the last time today? You get better health advice from your dentist than you do your doctor. Because your dentist will say, hey, little Johnny here is getting a cavity. Tell him to lay off the sugar. Make sure you brush your teeth. Make sure you do this. There's a couple things right there that you'll hear from your dentist versus your doctor. Your doctor, your pediatrician's not going to say, hey, you need to lay off the sweets. I almost said something bad. You need to lay off the sweets here. No, they're going to say, hey, we have this new experimental drug for type 2 diabetes in children. You want to try it? And parents are like, I don't know. He's not going to stop eating sugar. You're not going to tell me it, but I know that he's not going to do it anyway. So just give me that medication. Let's see what happens. Okay? So, yeah. And then promotes lifelong health practices. This couldn't be further from the truth. Not only do they not give dietary advice, okay, you'd have to go to a dietitian, okay, a registered dietitian or something like that for that dietary advice, okay? Pull the hood up on this and you're like, okay, what's under the hood in this instance? Well, we're talking about lifelong practices. It's like, okay, when you go in for your pediatrician, what's the number one thing that they're going to tell you that your kid needs? Oh, wait. They need a shot. They need a vaccine. When you talk about continuing lifelong practices, that means you stay on your government prescribed vaccine dosing. And I don't even care if you're spacing it out. Your doctors get a little bit ticked off about that because they get paid less as a kickback from it, but you're still consuming the drug. It's like, I'm just going to take a little bit of heroin, but I'm going to space out my doses so I don't really get hooked. And then I could be like straddling in between an anti-vaxxer and a vaxxer, and then I can make everybody kind of happy in any conversation. Like, no. If you delayed it, cool, it could be less inflammatory, but you're still putting the toxic shit in your kid's body. And I'm going to say that because I don't want our kids to be poisoned. That's just my thing. I want your body to be as healthy as humanly possible. Okay? And the fact that, yes, I was vaccinated as a kid, and then I found out that I wasn't fully vaccinated as a kid because back then there was a little vaccine card. You would just pencil in what shots were received. And I won't say the name, but somebody penciled in, hey, you got this one, trace the doctor's signature, and boom, there's your proof that I had it done. So I'm a little bit better off. But even if I did get the full dose all up until the stupid freaking flu shot became popular, I mean, I was rocking swine flu. Like, I was around people with swine flu, all that stuff during college. I mean, come on. So anyways, so when you go to your pediatrician, that's going to be the number one thing that they're going to try to recommend for you is, hey, you haven't had your shot yet. Do you want to do that shot? You need that shot. You need to keep that shot. And if you don't do it and you keep spacing it out, your pediatrician then gets pissed off at you for not doing it. How dare you not do that? I've had patients come to me in tears because their pediatrician bullies them into trying to vaccinate their kids. And I've had patients who have given in and are bawling their eyes out because they know that they just poisoned their fucking kid. Or you'll have patients who know for a fact that this stuff is toxic. It will harm their kids, and the doctor forces them to do it, or else they're going to terminate them as a patient. And then they have a kid that now has neurological damage due to them. Direct cause and effect. Boom, 1 week. Kid changed. Oh, it wasn't a vaccine. So This isn't a vaccine talk. I'm going to bring on one of my buddies to talk more about that and link this. So maybe I'll tick off enough people or maybe I'll pique interest in enough people that you'll start listening and be like, you know what, maybe I do want to know a little bit more information about that. And then I'll bring my buddy Dale on. Dr. Dale, Dr. Brown. So anyways, the other thing, I digressed again, and I have a feeling I'm going to be doing it through this entire episode here, and hopefully you're all right with that. If you're made it 40-some episodes in, you probably know that about me by now. But, okay, so we talk about the lifelong practices, etc., right? Then it goes down and says, people also ask, what are 5 typical duties of a pediatrician? Okay? Remember, start lifelong health practices, right? Communicate with their patients and parents and caregivers on what's going on and stuff. What do? They examine and assess general physical condition. So this is your typical sports physicals, for guys, turn, cough, blah, blah, blah. Good, there's your physical, right? Administration of non-intravenous medications, okay, so giving drugs, prescribing medications, drugs, prescribe treatments or therapies, drugs, treat acute illnesses, infections, or injuries, drugs, treat chronic diseases or disorders, drugs, or medical or diagnostic clinical tests to give drugs. It's right there. Again, this is just basic Google right here. This is on, I don't even know, 1tonline.org. I don't know. What does a pediatrician do daily? Treating common ailments, minor injuries, administering vaccines. Like, it's there. And people are like, oh my gosh, they're running medical tests though. They're going to run a test and my insurance is going to cover it. I'm so excited to get this test run. Do you know why that doctor is running that test? It's not to make you better. It's to bill the insurance to get the insurance to cover that medication. So he could be your drug dealer or she could be your drug dealer. And your kid can be the consumer. What happens if your kid gets diagnosed with ADHD? Man, what a great subscription membership to Drugs for Life, right? What about liver damage from that? What about brain damage from that? Long-term effects of Ritalin and Adderall? Not good. Look it up. So if they can convert your children into drug consumers at a very young age, then what's going to happen is for life, every single month, for life, that kid, your kid, you will pay for that kid's script until they're 20-some years old. I don't know when insurance gives up, gives up. I don't know when insurance gives up on teens going into the adult years. But then that kid, that adult, is then going to have to take over for the Adderall. Or what if a kid goes through a depressive bout? They get stuck on depression medication. Now, I'm just curious here. Y'all have to bear with me. You're seeing me do live time Google searching here. No, I'm not a fan of Google, but I didn't update this one to DuckDuckGo yet. Okay, so average cost out of pockets for Adderall. Holy cow. Okay. Adderall without insurance is $237 per month. $237 per month. We're busting out the calculator here. $237 a month times 12. That's like $3,000 a year. It's $2,844. So let's just say out-of-pocket cost, without GoodRx, out-of-pocket cost for 1 year, and we'll just say your kid gets diagnosed at 5, which is usually when kids are supposed to get freaking diagnosed. So this is before they get into kindergarten, those types of things where the setting changes. But anyways, so we'll say that at 5 they do, and we'll go to 20. So that's going to be 15 years. So 2,844 times 15 means you're spending $42,000. $42,000 by the time your kid basically is 20 years old. 42 grand. And you're like, oh, functional medicine is too expensive. Too expensive. This is, look, if you can see, 42,660. Right? And that's just 15 years. The average Let's do this. Average time frame someone stays on Adderall. No standard time frame for somebody to take Adderall. Can take this for life. Yeah. Right? So this is your lifestyle stuff that your pediatrician is doing, right? The other thing too, okay? The other thing is indirectly they are then treating or teaching your children that their bodies are incapable of being able to heal and recover on their own. That if they have an ailment, they have to go to the doctor to go get checked out, right? They have to go to the doctor. Now, there are some times and instances where mama's intuition, you're like, oh my gosh, like something's wrong. I feel like this might be a cancer, whatever. Okay, it's cool to go and get some tests run, but you have to know, parents, you have to know in the back of your mind, you're going there to get a diagnosis. They're seeing you to get you a medication or surgery. It's the only two tools that they have to work with. So you can't be surprised. But if you go in and you know that, like, hey, I just want to rule anything ominous out. I want to make sure my kid's good. And then they're like, okay, cool. We're going to give you this medication. Like, not doing the medication, just want to run the test. I'm going to take that and I'm going to go and check something else out. There are instances where I'll tell parents, like, listen, it's going to take 2 weeks or so for the majority of my tests to go back. Or like I have to direct ship it to you. And then it takes, 2-3 days for you to get the kit. Then it takes, 2 days for you to run the test, get a phlebotomist out there, another 2 days. So it's going to be like a week. Versus if you just went to an urgent care, paid them real quick, boom, you get the results next day or 2 days after. And then I'll interpret that for you, right? Because when it comes to interpretation, you have your clinical ranges. When you have clinical ranges, this is where if you bounce outside too high or too low, you're going to get medicated or you're going to get suggested to get medicated. Versus functional is like, okay, you're not quite out yet, but I don't like the way these numbers look, so let's work on diet and lifestyle. The simple stuff. Work on diet and lifestyle, start coaching you there, which should be done at a very young age where your pediatrician, if they're a great person, would be like, listen, studies are coming out saying gluten is very damaging to children. It's damaging to the gut. It's damaging to the microbiome, damages the stomach acid, depletes that. It also leads to ADHD activity. And also be sure to avoid dairy because then you're going to increase your risk for yeast overgrowth, fungal overgrowth, hormonal imbalances, acne, brain fog. Your kid's going to do bad in school. If we taught them, or if pediatricians taught you as a parent to teach your kids at a very young age, hey, avoid these foods, then when they come to me and I'm like, hey, you got to be gluten-free because, your anti-gliadin IgA marker is through the roof. Okay, a marker on a stool, it's through the roof. Or you've got H. pylori or your gut is just a complete wreck. And I'm like, hey, get off of gluten. You're like, what gluten-free breads can I have? And I'm like, go for stuff that doesn't need to be labeled as gluten-free. Go eat whole foods. Go eat vegetables, go eat fruits, go eat protein, go eat stuff that doesn't have to be packaged together in a loaf for you to eat it. Because that's an emotional addiction that could have been stopped, could have been changed when your kid was young, when they were very, very young. Plus, you could have relied on the pediatrician to be the one saying, hey, I'll take this bullet for you real quick. Blame me. I'm the one telling you, make sure your kid doesn't eat this stuff. So that way the parent's not like, hey, I'm telling you to do this. They're like, well, the doctor said not to eat this stuff, not to eat this toxic food. Sorry, so I have to just do what the doctor says. It's a passive push of a healthy agenda, right? I do this all the time. Blame the crazy guy. Blame the crazy doc. That's me. Blame me. I don't care. If your kid gets upset with me, cool. You'll thank me in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Gluten has gluteomorphins in it. Dairy has casomorphins in it. It's morphine-like compounds. It makes the stuff super addictive. So again, I know we have this crazy breast milk. We don't have a breast milk shortage. We've just been trained that formula is best. Just use formula. It's more convenient. Mom can get back to work. Yay! It's super fucking toxic for you, and people are pissed that it's not on the shelves. It's not saying I don't want formula ever to be used, but the stuff that's on the shelf is going to kill your kids. So I'm like back and forth on that. Go feed your kid off the teat. if you can, or go to a donor bank and try to get some real milk so your kid can drink some. Okay. Or again, I posted something in my stories the other day of a friend of mine. If you need a recipe for a breast milk replacement that's not a shit ass formula, we can get one over for you. Okay. Anyways, where the hell was I going with this? I could tell every time I get fired up, the swear words tend to roll out. So I apologize to my viewers and listeners if you don't like the lack of filter, the lack of filtration. I don't have a Berkey filter on my mouth right now. It's just flowing because I love kids. I love my kids. I love taking care of kids. I think I know kids are the future. And if we don't take care of them now, especially with how things are going, I mean, for the love of God, our kids are going to be super damaged goods and just steadily consuming medications for the rest of their lives. So again, with why I don't ever take my kids to the pediatrician, there's no freaking point to. All right. And I don't wait for my kid to die to do something about it. I run stool tests on my kids. Okay. I have to run a stool test on my daughter. I just got a kid in. She's had great digestion, but I still want to rule out anything ominous being in there. That's where these tests come into play. People are like, hey, I have a fever. What can I treat that with? What's causing it? What do you want? Like, I can give you some stuff to boost your immune system, give some nutrients, vitamin C's and stuff, so that way you can have some antioxidant support, or maybe a little bit of vitamin D in there with some K2. Like, what are you looking for? Are you looking to just kill some stuff? Which is the other thing that I messaged about in TikTok. Again, I'm doing a lot of interactions on TikTok. I love it because I can do direct video replies. I sound like a 100-year-old man. I got the TikTok and I'm doing the videos of the things and the reply. And yeah. So anyways, I didn't mean to sound like George Bush on that. That idiot. Anyways, so the other thing is a lot of people are saying, hey, I have this. What can I take? I've got this hormonal imbalance. What can I take? I've got this. What can I take? What that is showing me is 40, 50, 60, 70 years of indoctrination that when you have something that is wrong, you automatically just assume, what can I take to fix that real quick? It's the Amazon Prime fix. What can I do to make these numbers look okay in a month? I have to pass a physical, right? Not, hey, doc, why my numbers look like this? Why would they look like that? What can I do? What can I test to support that? A lot of hormonal questions. And I'm like, hey, did you get your stool tested? Did you get your adrenals tested? Did you get a full hormonal workup? No. I know the answer already is no. If you've been to medical doctors, no, you haven't. If you've been to specialists, no, you haven't. You're like, oh, I've been to a GI specialist. GI specialists are the biggest crock of shit that is known to man. GI specialists, gastroenterologists, you guys suck at your job. You're horrible, horrible, horrible at your job. Stop running tests on patients that are completely freaking incomplete and only killing. You're just killing. And you never, ever freaking educate to rebuild that microbiome after. You don't give a shit. You will give multiple rounds of antibiotics. Be like, I don't know why it's not working. Just keep taking. And yet their microbiome is like, I can't hang on anymore. I'm falling apart. And then you have somebody like a friend of mine who came post, and I understand he had to take some really high-dosed antibiotics. And yes, I hate antibiotics quite a bit. And the person who created antibiotics also, or penicillin, was also super, super, super nervous about antibiotics because they know that they could be used for good or they can be used in too much. They could be used in excess and cause massive damage to people, which is where we are today. But he carpet bombed his probiotics. We ran a stool test on him and he had depleted levels. Like the whole way through, microbiome was like, poof, wiped out. Sorry, not really going to be good here. Wiped out levels of probiotics. And what does that mean? That means that you're going to be more inclined to get infections, or intensity of infections are going to get even worse. You're going to have recurrent candida overgrowth. You're not going to be able to break down your food. You're going to have mood disorders. You name it. There's a whole host of things. More food sensitivities can take place as well. Your body just ultimately falls apart. So again, this goes back to what we're taught when we're young. So moms, dads out there. Yes, there is only moms and dads. Moms and dads out there for kids. When you're raising your kids, Okay, when you're raising your kids, it's your responsibility to then let your kid know what true health really is, because your doctors are not going to do it. Your pediatricians are not going to do it. Your hospital's not going to do it. Nobody's going to do it. And you can't get mad at them, which is like let me get mad at them because they do some stupid stuff. But when it comes to you getting mad that they give an antibiotic or they recommend a surgery and you're like, what the hell? You're paying them for that. You're paying for them to say what medication would go for that disease. You can't get mad at that. Now, when it comes to, for me, I'm like, you know that diagnosis, you know that infection. You didn't even test to see what antibiotic could even potentially kill that, or if they have a genetic SNP that says, oh, well, that's not going to work anyways, and you're still going to throw amoxicillin at them. Like, I don't know, we'll see. And if it doesn't work, we'll switch it up, right? I remember I probably shouldn't say this, but I had MRSA multiple times. Well, you can't see anymore because my tattoo's kind of covering it, but it looked like a gunshot wound in the back of my tricep, or on my tricep, back of my arm. And I remember coming home, I'm like, what the hell is that thing on the back of my arm? My mom was like, I don't know. So I cut the dang thing open. I'm like just digging inside of it, pulling out all this goo. I guess I should put like explicit warning on this. Hey, this can get graphic. Pulling all this stuff out. And I remember going into the urgent care afterwards because my whole arm went pink. Like the whole inflammation, everything just went down my arm. And the doc was like, oh, yeah, that's pretty bad. That was MRSA. It seemed like you got it all out, but like you're good. I'm like, okay. So I went back to Penn State. This is at Penn State. And went to a doc out there, and because I had another one that popped up. And he gave me these antibiotics, and he was like, hey, let me know how these work. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, I just want to see if they work for you. I'm like, all right. I'm, college meathead, former football player. I'm like, whatever. Like, this isn't going to hurt me. I didn't know any of what I know now back then. And a horrible side effect took place where massive inflammation occurred in an area of my body that was not enjoyable, just to be clear. And I came back to him. I'm like, dude, what the heck? And he goes, yeah, I had a feeling that was going to happen. Let's get you on this instead. I'm like, what the fuck? What? So again, it all comes down to, why would you need a pediatrician? Why? When you can have a doc like myself, okay? And I'm not saying I am a pediatrician or I am a medical doctor. My doctorate is in chiropractic. What I do right now is a naturopathic health expert. I pull in from my chiropractic knowledge, my doctoral knowledge there. I have traditional Chinese stuff that I'm working with and learning and administering as well. I've got functional medicine. I've got naturopath. I blend all of that. I got to choose my own education, which is great. Blend all of that together, and that's what I'm doing. So when it comes to, hey, can I write a script for an antibiotic? Hell no. Nor would I. No. If you truly, truly, truly need something, I'll send you somewhere to go get it. Or I have some compound pharmacies that I work with for different scripts, bioidenticals, etc. But when it comes to your everyday, hey, what would you do for my kid if? I'm like, well, what proactive tests have you run? Patients are like, I don't know. What do you mean? Like, well, did you run a foods test on it to see what foods your kid does well with? You should do that. If your kid's having a lot of problems with skin or bloating or diarrhea, or you can run a stool test. Super easy to do. It's a little messy because you're going to have to do it. Your kid's not going to do it, so run a stool test. It doesn't matter if your kid's 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, whatever. Run a stool test analysis. You'll get a good idea of what's going on in your kid's microbiome, and that's going to be your big predictor on what your kid's life is going to be. And so you have the ability to influence your kid's life and improve your kid's life at a very young age. So can you come to me if your kid's in dire need of support? I can give you some support, sure, but I'm strongly going to recommend a stool test. And I'm like, hey, we got to figure out what's doing it. If your kid's colicky, your kid's got cradle cap or some horrible rash, or they have mold toxicity, you could do a urine test for that, right? So when you run these proactive tests, this should be your yearly physical. Yeah, they're more expensive, but again, you're paying $42,000 for Adderall by the time for 15 years. versus, 423 or 428. I don't know the exact price for a stool test. And then, it's going to cost a little bit for the supplements, but then you're done. And then you change your diet and lifestyle, and disease is caused by inflammation. Cancer is 95% diet and lifestyle. So again, if we hijack what health is with your kids at a very young age, then your kids will be able to grow up properly without feeling like they need medication, without feeling like they need vaccinations or whatever other jab juice they're going to come at with us next, the fucking monkeypox, whatever this bullshit is that they're going to try to launch out here for us, okay? We have the ability to be like, listen, and this would be great. Like if I had my own little school, I talk about this all the time. Maybe I'll manifest this and I'll look back like in 10 years, like, I made my own schools. But I would love to be able to hijack health education in schools. I would love it. Revamp all of the food in the school. No vending machine garbage, no honey mustard twisted Snyder pretzels, no like hot pocket looking things that just fall out of the vending machine. None of that crap. Fresh food. Okay. I mean, for God's sakes, our tax dollars should pay for a little bit nicer food, because my kids aren't even going to freaking public school and I'm paying taxes as if they were, which is ridiculous. But that's a whole different thing. I learned more about the tax system and how corrupt it is. Anyways, you hijack that. You teach people how to be healthy. You teach people how to analyze the spine as well, how to get adjusted, go to get adjusted, make sure you're feeding your body, getting the nutrients in. When you have your yearly physical, run a stool test analysis. When kids turn of age of puberty, run a hormone test, run a Dutch test on them, see where the hormones are at. Why wait 20 years? Be like, oof, you developed breast cancer, when you could be like, well, shit, you were pushing down the 4-hydroxy pathway this whole time. We just had to change your diet, stop putting that chemical crap makeup on your face that was pushing estrogens, and then boom, you could stop cancer in its tracks. It's like, was it Minority Report? When they thought that they could stop crimes before they occurred? Well, we have the ability to stop disease before it occurs. And by doing that, it gets less glory than somebody who saved somebody from cancer or treated somebody with diabetes. Why? Because the fear of that word is very powerful. If I'm like, yeah, we totally stopped your chance of getting cancer, or hey, yeah, you're never going to have to deal with blah, 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 or, and I would never say never, but if I said those things, you'd be like, cool, I appreciate it, but it doesn't have the same effect as if I'm like, listen, we ran some tests, we did some treatments, and your multiple myeloma is in remission. You're like, oh. And that's a true story. I have a patient like that right now in remission. Hey, I know that you had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. We ran some tests and it's gone. It's in remission. Cool. You know what the awesome thing about my treatments are? No medications. Okay. Multiple myeloma patient, she was going back and forth between certain chemos. I was pulling her off because she kept getting tested and her numbers were reflecting that of the chemo medication. They're like, well, we're going to keep you honest until these numbers improve. I'm like, do I need to do your job for you? You could, again, Google, look at some research on what this medication does to a patient's CBC, the complete blood count, and CMP, your metabolic panel, and see what's showing. And your medication's doing that, right? Poisoning the body doesn't bring you health. It tries to kill a disease. And it's not always successful. When you do stuff like with what I do, I teach you how to change your diet, how to change your lifestyle. Is it easy? No, most certainly is not. And I'm probably going to end up getting more selective on which patients I bring on because I need people to take the diet side of things more seriously. Okay, when we're killing an infection, please remove as many of the garbage carbohydrates as you can. It's for a short period of time. You'll lose some weight. You'll enjoy that portion of it. But at the same time, you don't want to be feeding the infection something that it can grow with. If we could intervene at a young age and in a perfect world, right, we wouldn't even have children born in hospitals. Why? Because the infant mortality rate in America is absolutely appalling. Look that up. Infant mortality rate. Let's check this out. Mortality. I got a graph here. Hold on. Let me zoom in. Infant mortality rate. Okay. Well, this study was 2008, but I mean, you can still say, 2008 really wasn't that long ago. And it's not like we got any better with this. Okay. The only country worse than the US was Slovakia. Okay? What does worse? Cuba did better than we did. Poland did. Scotland, New Zealand, Australia, England, Netherlands, Italy, Israel, Denmark, Austria, Switzerland. These are all developed countries, by the way. Singapore did the best. Sweden did second best. Hong Kong, Japan, Finland, Norway, Czech Republic, Portugal, France, Belgium, Greece, Germany. We suck at delivering babies. Okay? Why? Because we deliver babies and we poison them. Boom. Let's rush it. Let's cut this baby out. I guarantee the infant mortality rate is worse now than it ever has been, or the death rate of SIDS is even higher now than it has been in the past. Look that up. Google that. What's the SIDS rate? Because why is like, Doc, why are you talking about this? Well, again, if we could do natural births, we had birthing centers. We gave birth in our house. Yes, people think that that's crazy, but we had 2 beautiful, healthy, awesome births. And I don't give a shit if they're like, hey, that baby's too big for you. Our son was 10 pounds, 7 ounces, and our daughter was 9'8". Okay? My wife is not huge. She is not a big woman. Okay? So when they're like, oh, we have to cut it out. The baby's too big. That's bogus. That's bogus. Okay? So anyways, you go home birth, right? You don't clamp the cord. You let mama hold baby, skin to skin contact. You get to keep that intimacy as long as you want to. Keep all the debris, the crusties on the kiddo, and then you get to chill. And boom, you latch, breastfeed. You start kids off like that. And there's research that shows is breastfeeding is way far superior than any formula that is out there. Sorry, government and news. Breast milk is natural. Breast milk is the way for babies to be fully healthy. We get our immune system markers. We get everything from mama passed on to baby, right? So if we can do that, and then we don't take our kids to go get vaccinated afterwards. We don't let them put the vitamin K shot. They don't put syphilis cream on the eyes of our babies. Like, come on. Really? Does my wife have syphilis? Do you really need to rub some syphilis cream on my baby's eyes? Get out of here. You would have known. You're looking down in that area. You would have seen some things that would have been a little bit abnormal. You've been working with us this entire time. Any history of syphilis? No. Okay, we don't need to do the syphilis cream. It's just standard procedure, right? So, anyways, we do that. We have our kids born as naturally as possible. We breastfeed the kids. We teach moms how to work with postpartum depression, how to rebuild their gut, how to avoid dairy when they're breastfeeding. Because that's the other thing, too, is women will get overwhelmed because they'll be breastfeeding their kids, and their kids are fussy all the time. They don't know what the heck is doing it, but their pediatrician isn't telling them to pull them out the freaking dairy. They're like, you should put them on formula. Formula is easier. You should get some sleep, and then your baby's fussy. Like, oh, we'll put you on a less milky formula. Baby's still fussy. You're like, well, that's the best we got, right? All the stuff that's in that is horrible. It's all man-made. It's all smashed together. And like, maybe this will help, okay? And to me, I'm like, I just feel like it's a bunch of guys in a room. We're like, oh, I don't know, what do we feed a kid? You know, like, should we just blend up some venison? I don't know, throw some whiskey in there? Like, no, we can't do that. Let's just say there's some vitamins in there. Let's say it's fortified because that sounds strong. We'll throw some of that, maybe some milk stuff, and we'll dry some milk out, make it seem fancy, and then when you add water, it won't be dry anymore. And then we'll say put it in a bottle and make sure it's the right temperature, maybe. Like, they have no idea what they're talking about. So anyways, do that. Breastfeed. Teach moms how to breastfeed properly. Don't put all that stress on them. Teach, and this should be something that's mandatory too, teach husbands and wives how to communicate back and forth properly while they're going through the new baby. That would be a beautiful thing for mom to basically say, hey, I need help. I need support. And husbands, instead of being like, that's your job, you just got to do it, be like, oh, I'm sorry, hon. What can I do to help and support you? So that way you feel loved and supported through this entire thing. And then you get to the age where, you know, kids can get banged up and bruised or whatever. Like, the only time you really need a doc with a kid is if they break a bone, break a nose. I won't even say stitches because our son ripped his face open. We went to the doctor, they stitched it, And I had to put new glue or new skin on it like 3 hours after because he ripped all the stitches out, which was disgusting because I don't do the whole blood side of things, which again, it's funny that I run blood work, but I don't draw the blood. So it's all good. I just see it on the paper. So you don't need that pediatrician. I don't care what your insurance company says. If your insurance company says you're going to drop you because you don't go to a pediatrician, then find another insurance company or find somebody who will help and support you. Because basically what they're doing is forcing you against your will to do something that you know in your heart of hearts is wrong, but they're still forcing you to do it. Not cool. Your body, your choice, right? So if we can teach parents, we can teach kids, and we can teach you how to live healthy, what to feed your body, how to detect for food sensitivities, what an elimination diet might look like. What's a food sensitivity panel? Kids should know that from being really young. Our kid Hoyt will go through the grocery store and point out and laugh at people who are eating dairy. He goes, "Dad, that's bad. That has dairy in it. That'll hurt your belly." I'm like, "Yep." We're aware of that 400-pound person over there probably doesn't feel it because they're just bloated all the time and inflamed all the time, right? Because how long have they been consuming that stuff? It's the other thing with food sensitivities. Like, I've had eggs my entire life. I've never had any problems with it. We'll pull it out for 2 weeks and try it again. What happens? Symptoms come. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's a drop in inflammation from not consuming it. Where there is not an inflammatory food, there is not inflammation. So then your body's able to flourish. It's able to function. It's able to heal properly. Okay? So for those of you out here like, well, what do we need a pediatrician for? You don't need one. Unless you plan on doing vaccinations, unless you plan on running antibiotics and all of those other things, you don't need one. Okay? Pediatrician's not going to fix a broken bone. You're going to go to an urgent care. You're going to go to a hospital. That's where they're going to do the real stuff, the real trauma stuff. And then afterwards, you're going to have to find somebody like me anyways to help you to be able to rebuild the gut after a round of antibiotics or whatever it is that one of those people would put you on. So what should you do? Find a functional medicine practitioner. Find somebody that I trained. Work with me. It doesn't matter. Find somebody that knows how to teach you how to make sure that your kid is healthy. True health. And health isn't in how many shots did I get. Did I get all of them? If I get 100, do I get a free Subway sandwich? Like, is this a punch card? Do I get something at the end? No, you get a toxic lifestyle, and who knows what the long-term damage is going to be with this many vaccinations. All we can say is we're predicting infertility rates to go up, autism rates to go up, cancer rates, diabetes, heart disease, all going up. So are we doing good? Maybe. No, we're doing terrible. Okay? So if you're a pediatrician out there and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm a pediatrician, this isn't what I do, and blah, 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 then good. Use your stance, use your platform. Reach out to me even. I would love to be able to send kids to somebody, because that's the other thing too, is do I know a holistic pediatrician? I'm like, that's kind of an oxymoron. They don't exist. If you are one, then reach out so I can use you as a reference, and I can say, hey, I'll interview you beforehand. I'm like, hey, so-and-so really needs some help and support with blah, blah, blah. Can you do this for me? It's going to be rare. Quite honestly, it's going to be rare. I've helped babies, kids, toddlers, infants, everything, every age group, all the way into the 90s get better. But in those rare instances where I'm like, hey, this patient just needs a pediatrician or just wants a pediatrician just in case for something, then I'll give you a call, or I'll have them give you a call. But you could probably, if you're also that type of pediatrician, then you also know that I am right. That this is a plague that has swept the medical community. And you're a beacon of light to try to change that. And so I hope that you inspire other pediatricians to start viewing health from a holistic standpoint. And I always joke and say, hey, do you know how you know somebody's good at what they do and they truly care about you and your health? They don't take insurance. I'll wait. They don't take insurance. Why? 2 reasons. Number 1, they can go rogue and go and run a test that insurance isn't going to cover because insurance doesn't deem it medically necessary to truly be able to get to that root cause. Insurance doesn't cover proactive testing. It doesn't, right? What's the other thing? The other reason why, if somebody doesn't collect insurance, they also have to be really good at what they do, because insurance isn't paying for it. It's going to be more expensive. If it was more expensive and they were terrible, they wouldn't still be in business. I used to talk about this with chiropractors too. Chiros, stop charging insurance companies. Go rogue. Go without insurance companies, because then people get addicted to what their insurance will cover. Insurance doesn't cover what's going to make you well. I used to see when I would adjust patients, people would have scoliosis, be like, my insurance covers 12 visits. I'm like, what am I going to do in 12 visits? I'm not going to just take a baseball bat and whack you in the lumbar spine to try to break that scoliosis curve. You're like, what are you thinking here? Well, insurance says that's all it's medically necessary, so that's all I'm going to come for. So you come for 12 visits and you say chiropractic didn't work, right? It's hilarious when you think about it. But seriously, what about reverse curve in the neck? You're working like this all day. Your head's in that head forward posture, and you're just looking down, and then you're like, hey, my neck hurts. I've got thyroid problems. I got migraines. I've got numbness and tingling down my arms and hands. What do? Do I need a medication? No, you need surgery. What? Insurance will cover you for a surgery, but they won't cover you to get adjusted, 36, 48 times. They won't cover your dental usage. They won't cover your x-rays for your spine. Like, what? So, anyways, don't rely on what your insurance is going to cover for you. It's a pain in the butt, and I wish there were more insurance companies like the Good Samaritan, Christian Ministry, I think, is another one that people would use. Care Credit is another one too. It's not an insurance company, but it's like a health credit card you could pay off. Makes it a little easier. Sometimes people, like docs, would give discounts using Care Credit or not, even though Care Credit just gouges with the rates against docs. So you charge like $100, they take so much of it. But I wanted to do this. I knew it was going to be inflammatory. I didn't know how long I was going to go for or rant for, but there has to be a change. Something has to change. And the end of my generation, right? The younger half of my generation, and these new age college students and these knuckleheads are just loud and obnoxious and feel entitled. They're gonna destroy the world. If we can help the newborns, these, like my kids, the 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds, 7-year-olds, learn how to heal, function, and operate at 100%, then we can ultimately phase out these morons that don't know what they're talking about. Could phase them out. They're not going to last long. It's not to be, cruel or unusual, but like, you're stressed that much, you yell that much, you hate that much, you internalize that. Your body's going to develop cancer, and you're not going to be here very much longer, because cancer treatment really isn't that healthy for you, and it's not that great long term. Okay, there are instances, children and stuff like that, where you catch it young and you can have good outcomes with that. But I mean, if it's not that, it's going to be something else. It's going to be a heart attack because your freaking blood pressure's through the roof because you're mad all the time. But if we raise this generation to be these peace lovers that are just floating around like, yay, things are good. Like, let's bring back Woodstock. Let's do that. Maybe without some of the drugs, but let's bring back Woodstock. Let's bring back good music. Let's bring back positivity, where you can turn on the radio and it doesn't talk about somebody killing somebody else, or a rap song talking about what they're going to do sexually to somebody else. I'm like, man, like, this is some vulgar stuff. Like, come on, it shouldn't even be allowed to be on the air. Like, what is going on? I remember when I was a kid, like, my dad got upset when we watched Liar Liar, because there's like I think said something about boobs or something like that, like super PG, and he was like, how is this PG-13? Like, this is ridiculous. And I'm like, I get it now, but like, now it's like, this is like, hey, look, I'm naked in a Disney movie, basically. Like, what? So what should you do? If you've got kids, trust your gut, trust your instinct. If you need your kids looked after, I'm happy to help. Just call the office and schedule an appointment for them. know that we're going to be going proactively. And yeah, I'll help with the reactive stuff too, because, if this is your first time working with me, you've done nothing to be proactive. Most people have done nothing to be proactive, or you've done some research but don't really know how to apply it. So we'll go into that. The hardest part, quite honestly, parents, is that diet aspect of it, getting them to eat healthy and not asking, what can I do for gluten-free, or what can I do for this? What's a good replacement for that? Like we have to really go all in on this, and kids are going to learn from what we do as adults. So we can't tell our kids not to eat gluten and dairy and corn and soy, and we're just sitting there like, this pizza's delicious. They're not going to respect that. And we're like, why are you allowed to do it, but I'm not allowed to do it? It doesn't make any sense. So there's going to be resentment around that emotional aspect of the food. So then when they grow up and they're on their own, they're going to binge eat pizza. Why? Because they weren't allowed to do it when they were a kid, but their parents did it. Right? You have to know this. You have to do this dance. You have to educate parents. You have to educate. You can't always just say, because I said so. You have to be like, well, listen, every time you eat this, what happens? Oh, my belly hurts. Yes. So is that good or is that bad? It's bad. What's that doing? It's causing inflammation in your body, and inflammation makes you sick. Do you want to be sick? No way, right? I want you to be strong as humanly possible. I want you to be able to move mountains. So what I'm doing as a parent is just trying to help to guide you along that proper path. That's all. And then from the testing standpoint, I can help you from there. Okay? So I'm going to sign off with that. Gave you guys a lot here this morning, but I hope this is beneficial. Not that I don't hope it was beneficial. I know it was beneficial. If you listen to it, I know it's beneficial. We just have to get this information out there. So Doc Jacque is going to sign off. I need to get a glass of water because I've been talking nonstop, but I love y'all. Thank you for tuning in as usual, and we'll talk next time.